AI is great, but we really need to teach people how to think better. Clarity is kindness. I took on a lot of guilt and shame for team members that I brought on. We need to be developing self leaders and more coaches than I would say managers. Can I give people that space to develop this and mirror that back to them? What's actually
Melodie Moore is the founder of Business Tech Ninjas, a tech first agency that specializes in building and optimizing WordPress membership sites for seven-figure plus businesses with a strong focus on systematization, automation, and emotional intelligence within team culture. Melodie, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, Melodie, introduce yourself. Let us know who you are and what you do.
So I'm Melody, as you know. I'm based out of Toronto, but I travel quite frequently. One of my favorite things about what I do is that I get to travel around and meet clients all over the world. I'm currently in Ohio, which I gotta admit, I'd rather be in California, but it's nice to meet people face to face. And I have a fascination with how technology can work well within businesses. Obviously, our specialty is with membership sites, but just overall on how tech can really be implemented well. I think the challenge that we face right now is not a lack of technical tools out there, but how to actually make those tools work within a business without falling into noise and complexity and overwhelm.
And we were just talking about that before we started recording, that sometimes you build something and you want to make sure that the platform that you hand over to your client is something that they're able to use without getting overwhelmed as well. So that's part of your challenge, I would imagine.
Is, and a lot of what I've realized over the last 10 years is it's not just what we build, it's how we support it ongoing. With a membership site or any sort of technical item that we build out for a business, we want to implement it, but then we also want to stay in contact with that customer. Sometimes this means a retainer, sometimes it just means checking in every so often to say, hey, how is that going? Because as a founder, it can be challenging to keep on top of your team. And so we help mentor internal team members to actually use the technology properly. To say, okay, hey, like what's working with this, what's not? Because I do find, I don't know if you find this with your stuff as well, it's an iterative process of we build something, but then, okay, how is it working for you? Okay, let's tweak this, let's optimize this, let's make it a little bit better. And that's really what gives a lot of value to the technical systems we put in place is not that initial work, but that 1% better after that initial build.
Yes, the aftercare, it's really important, as you said. And yeah, just for the context of anybody listening, you're kind of my sister from another mister in that we have very similar businesses. I'm assuming I'm actually wanting to find out more about your business because I only know superficially, but we both run services agencies helping people with membership sites, using the term very broadly, membership sites, community sites, e-learning,
Mhm.
some kind of membership oriented sites in WordPress primarily. So, what exactly do you offer to your customers? What are your products and services? What does your help look like for them?
We specialize in that seven-figure membership set, which is typically certification companies, companies that offer some sort of certification. Like, my personal specialty is going in and untangling really complex businesses that have had just a lot of tech people in there throughout the years, looking at that, mapping it out, and getting rid of a lot of the noise. It's kinda like I kinda think of business sometimes like a junk drawer. It's like, "Let's add this tool in there. Let's add this tool." You hire somebody else and like, "I really like this CRM or this heat mapping tool." Then all of a sudden you're paying for 3 heat mapping tools and nobody really knows why. So that's my favorite thing. I kind of think of it like going into a spice rack and organizing it. I love that. That's one of the services that we offer as a retainer to manage internal teams' tech stacks. But then a lot of the times it's just about getting clarity on what it is that you're actually doing. So we offer clarity calls where we'll get in there, understand, okay, what's the problem we're actually trying to solve? It's very much like a bite-sized piece. Figure out what that problem is, solve that problem. We just move from problem to problem. And then sometimes there's a project that kind of comes from that once you have clarity about what it is that you actually want to do. One of the big issues that I've found is that we can end up falling into the illusion of progress an awful lot. I heard about AI. Let's implement some AI. And then somebody goes and spends 20 hours or hires some company to do a chatbot on their site. But nobody's really actually knows, like, well, what's this AI chatbot supposed to solve? Like, what problem are we actually trying to solve for here? And I think that's really important in business from a strategic standpoint to spend less but achieve more is first get clear on what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And what I find is that, both as a business owner and working with clients, that it's not always, I don't always really know. Like, I know I have a problem, I know there's something there, but you need to collaborate with different stakeholders, whether it be on my own team, my team members, or clients, or just to kind of ask those questions and look at the data, look at what's actually going on. It's like, well, if we solve this problem, let's say, to use the example of the AI chatbot, we're going to get less customer service emails in. So it's like, well, right now we're getting 30 customer service emails. We think if we put this chatbot in place, that it's going to then reduce that down by half would be our goal. And then you look at the chatbot with a different lens then of, okay, well, what would need to happen in order to make that work? And it just changes your frame when you're implementing that. Whereas the illusion of progress is, let's just do AI. And I feel like there's just so much waste in business. I don't know if you see this on your end as well, Vic.
I totally resonate with so much of what you just said. Reframing any kind of activity in terms of prospective ROI, because that doesn't sound like a
Hmm.
good deal to spend, 10K or however much on a chatbot, and you have to
People
maintain it.
do it.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, if the client insists on, handing you their money for something that you've advised them that is probably not the best use of that money,
Hmm.
okay, that like fair enough, right? You gave fair warning.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from the perspective of using your example, you've got 30 support requests per month. Okay, how much time does that take?
Yeah.
Are there some kind of sort of, I don't know what you would call it, legacy automation solutions that we can put in place? Don't require
Hmm.
a chatbot. How do you know people even want to talk to a chatbot? Maybe they want to feel like they're
Good point.
talking to a human, and you can automate it so that it appears that way, and
Hmm.
you're still getting so in other words, it's like, do you really want to hit this thing with a sledgehammer when maybe it just requires some tweezers? And also from the perspective of, yeah, not just ROI, but also opportunity cost. What else could you do with that time and money? Is this a shiny object? It probably is. 9 times out of 10, whatever it is, it probably is a shiny object. And I think the reality of business is that you need to make revenue and you need to make profit. So if you focus in vis-a-vis working with clients, helping to guide them towards the things that actually move the needle and drive revenue and profit, then they'll probably be thankful for that type of guidance. I don't know. Have you found that to be the case?
I would say so. I also get a lot of pushback. I think that we, as it's interesting for me because I can speak as a founder and as a business owner at the same time, also a service provider. And like sometimes when I push back on clients, because it's one of the differentiators that with us and what I tell my team and why I've really crafted that technologist role is, as business owners, we need people that will push back on us, because you get really excited about something, and that is it's such a it's such a hard balance, because that excitement and those new ideas and implementing that is really what grows a business. Like if you just keep doing the same thing over and over, your business is going to die in time. So it's like you need that, like that evolution of the company, which is I think what one of the main reasons of like what the founder's job is to see that kind of like forward casting of like, where is the market going? What can we be doing? And at the same time, you need people to push back and kind of say, okay, hey, I see what you're seeing, but also keep these things in mind. So it's like finding that balance. And what I see the challenge that business owners fall into is that they try to do too much, and then they get frustrated because it's like, well, why isn't anything done? And we
Mm.
work on retainers with some clients, and I love my retainer clients because I get to be like really part of their. I have an overactive mind, so I can't just work on my own business. I need 12 at any given time to be managing their tech stacks, and like, how do we really like, how do we take what you have from a technology standpoint and align that with your marketing and your sales goals and what your people goals are and everything else? And it's really kind of coming back of slowing them down, because I find this personally hard too, to say, well, you've got 3 things that you're working on, Melody. Which one do you really want to push forward on? And there's a fabulous book that I'm reading on scaling right now, and it really talks about how important focus is. And I think that that is hard to really wrap our heads around, because there's that fear that comes in, like if I don't do this, then my business is gonna close down. a lot of the times when I'm working on a strategic partnership level on our retainers, it's having that conversation with the founder, and there are oftentimes pretty heated conversations, but I'm not one to back away from a heated conversation.
So you're acting as the person who kind of pushes back on them and vice versa, which is good actually. If you know you need that, and they probably need that. Who in your team, or as far as a business coach or somebody, kind of holds you accountable and keeps you honest?
I'm a big fan of masterminds. I have some partners of mine who I've grown my company from, like, we've been friends for 10 years. I have several other business owners like that that are kind of in my inner circle. We've been in masterminds together throughout the different years. I think that would probably be the best one. And then also some mentors as well, of just people that are further along. But I think it is really important to keep that in mind. I also just love books, reading. I think one of the books recently that I really liked is by the CEO of Disney, Robert Eager, I think is his name, and it's probably one of the best. I think it's supposed to be a leadership book, but it was just a fascinating story of how, because it's a different world to the world I live in, and, like, running Disney is a very different beast than running my business tech ninjas. But I think that you can also get a lot of feedback. Like, even though they're not looking necessarily, when you read a book, you're not getting feedback directly from that person, but just that change in perspective, even for yourself, of looking at your own things and what's going on with your team and your business through that lens of somebody else. I think you get that from reading a lot too, because I don't think Robert Eager is going to coach me directly. Maybe one day in my dream of dreams.
Yeah, and it's also, it cuts both ways because as we were talking before we hit record, that for example, you were saying you read a lot of books on hiring.
Yes.
Have you found them useful?
I found them useful to varying different degrees. I think there's one that's just this, I think it's top grading is
Mhm.
probably the one that has been the most useful as far as, but I mean, top grading is good, but essentially I can sum up top grading in one line, which is put people through a series of things when you're hiring them to see who they are before you hire them. And I've really honed in our hiring process. We get 1,000 applicants every month. I have found that with hiring with tech, it's easier for me to get somebody with the right mindset and no credentials and
Yes.
invest in them both personally and professionally than it is in hiring somebody that wants a much, much higher dollar rate, but oftentimes really lacks the core skills that I've found to really make a difference, both with me and then with our clients. So top grading gives me a framework for that. But I've really been disappointed by a lot of the literature out there on how to hire well, and a lot of, like, I would say, surface level advice. Like, if one more person tells me to hire A players, like, goodness, it's like, where are these magical A players that you can pay 3 times as much and they're gonna come in and they're gonna magically transform your business? It's like, maybe that is applicable if you're running Netflix or Apple, or you're trying to build something that really is, like, world changing, but for a lot of, like, my clients and for myself, it's like, we're delivering a quality service day over day. Like, I'd like to think it's world changing, but I don't we're not sending rockets to Mars where it's like people who went to Harvard are gonna be like, "Yeah, this is what I wanna do with my life." Like, it's much more day by day, and I think that advice just really falls flat, and it's really frustrating because it feels like it's almost like there's something just wrong with me as a business owner. Like, if only you could hire A players, Melody, then your business would just be fantastic, and I think there's a lot of nuance that's missing within that.
100%. That's been my experience too. I've read Top Grading. I read was it Who, the A method for hiring.
There's who not how too, which is, also there's they're good books. I just think that there's more that is needed as well. I think one of the challenging things is I consider myself an empathetic leader, and I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. So when someone says, "I'm not doing this because of training or because of this," like, it's been a lot of trial and error through the years. I'm really honestly getting taken advantage quite a few times, and I think people talk a lot about how businesses take advantage of team members, but I don't think there's enough of a conversation of, you know, I think there's one side of that, like, large corporation, but there's a lot of smaller businesses that I think get taken advantage of because people, I mean, a lot of people just don't want to take responsibility for themselves. And, that's why I've developed ClarityOps, which is a system for managing team that really makes it obvious if somebody's just full of it. I think it's a tool that allows for an empathetic leader to manage a team, whether you have contractors or employees. It gives you the framework to run your business where you don't have to take on that emotional load for team members. Because I think part of the challenge is you want to grow a business and you don't want to be tied to your business all the time to be able to take vacations. You do need to have some level of team. It can be contractors, it can be employees, but you need to have some level of a team to really grow something beyond yourself. But so Clarity Ops is really the structure that allows for you to do that and not hate your life and not be the villain too, because nobody wants to be the villain. And so it's like, hey, here's the logic, here's what we agreed to. You're not doing this. And then there's a way of managing that. And then at the end of the day, like if anybody comes back at you after following that, then they really just are terrible people. We definitely did not want them in your business.
So ClarityOps is your internal HR system, you would say.
It's an internal operating system, so it doesn't just manage people, it manages all of your technical assets too. So that's when you think about, I talked a little bit about iteration. And I think one of the challenges that we have is that, build, let's just say an automated campaign for welcoming new members into your membership. That should be built once, but you should have an asset around that, similar to like if I were to build an office or something. You have that asset and the idea of that asset is that if something's wrong with this, you should be able to read that and understand how it's supposed to work. So that way, if you need to troubleshoot it, it really cuts that troubleshooting down quite a lot. Because if you don't have that, anybody that's looking at it has to remember how it was supposed to work if they built it. If they didn't build it, then they have to go in and figure that out. And you're talking hours just to do that. So the asset process is okay, like, how is this supposed to be working? And then on top of that, the other part to that is then keeping a log of any failures within this. So somebody didn't get their email, somebody didn't get this. And then that way you can clearly recognize patterns of we need to really look back at this and maybe rebuild this thing. Because with technical, just like a house, over time you build up noise, new technology comes out, and it's like, well, now it's probably time to do a complete reno on this at this point in time. But it's hard to understand if you're just falling into emotion or if there's a clear pattern. So the asset process allows you to clearly see if there's a pattern of this thing breaking where you can make that clear. And then additionally, you can see what potential other things you want to do. You can see a historic record of any changes that have been made, why those changes have been made. And that really helps to cut down on the time of upgrading those things, maintaining those things, and it also protects you from team members leaving. Because as much as I love team, like people, their lives change, there's different seasons. So you really don't want your business's technical aspects, your assets, to be dependent upon any team member or outside company, even my own. I got a big tangent about that. So Clarity Ops isn't just about managing your team, it's about managing your overall. It's basically a business engine. And I've worked with Traction and Rockefeller Habits and a lot of these other ones. Again, they just kind of fell flat for me. I invested a lot in Traction, hiring Traction experts, and a lot of it seemed really performative to me. Of the only real thing that I took from it is like I love level 10 meetings, but even that I've adapted a lot because it just became too bloated, and it became like we were doing these things, but I didn't actually see a good result from them necessarily.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience with the OS as well. It is something, I'm sure it's not just one thing. I'm sure it's the accumulation of a lot of little things from trial and error. But what's something that you could point to that in terms of your team that you've learned that's been really, that has really transformed the way that you and your team work? Yeah.
I'd say I mean, we have 4 tenants internally. The first thing is we're always looking for clarity, communication, collaboration, and 1% better. And if I were to choose one of those 4, I would consider in the book I'm reading on, scaling, they talk about the concept of your floor or your ceiling. And I consider these 4 items to be the floor. And when I think about my team, it's their ability to collaborate with me that really helps me and also helps our team as well. And now the really important thing with collaboration is that somebody that's wrapped up in ego and doesn't actually want to be useful and doesn't actually care about the outcome, they're not actually going to be able to collaborate. And if they don't have good communication, it's going to be really hard to collaborate as well. So collaboration is kind of almost like the canary in the coal mine to see like where is this person at? And then also similarly with clients, like I don't want to carry the mental weight and the mental load of all of their stuff. Like, I don't know their businesses. Like, I try to get to know them as much as I possibly can, but ultimately it's their business. We know tech, we know all the different things and all the different tools, but we need to come together and own the outcome together. Like, nobody likes it. Things do go wrong. Like, that's just a reality of life. And I think that the important factor is, what do you do when something goes wrong? Do you say, you should have done something better? Why didn't you do this? To go into blame, shame, and justify? Or do you put your heads together to say, okay, hey, let's stop the bleeding. What do we need to do retroactively to fix this? And what do we need to do going forward to make this better so it doesn't happen again? And if you assess it like that, then a lot of the stress and drama comes out of business. And I think that, the reason why I hired the team in the first place is because, one, lonely. Two, I didn't want to do all the things myself. But unless you have that collaboration with your team and anyone you hire, then I think it just becomes like you're the one that's just always holding that weight, which I think is why the life expectancy of entrepreneurs is so much lower than if you're an employee or a team member.
I didn't know that. You coined something called the technologist role. Can you explain what that means?
In the technologist role, I think I just picked it up. Like, it's used elsewhere. I don't think it's really popularized anywhere, but you see it kind of like every so often. The way that I think about a technologist is really bridging the gap between the business and then the technology to make the technology actually work for the business goals. And so they're looking to make sure that things aren't noisy, that you don't have three different heat mapping softwares. They're the ones that are saying, okay, hey, how is this tool actually going to work for the business? Not just, oh, I found this really great thing and it's amazing. And we have four different levels or layers of team. Technicians are probably the most common of what you would find the most part. How you know if somebody's a technician versus a technologist is a technician will add noise and doesn't think about the bigger picture. And you do need good technicians. There's no doubt about it. Like, every one of the different roles and layers is helpful, but it's really the magic is when all four of those ducks are in a row, that you get your operators working with your technicians, with your technologists and your strategists. That's when the magic really happens. And depending on your level of scale, you need less or more of those different levels. At a high scale, you need a lot more operators than you do on the low scale. On a low scale, you need people that can just get in and figure things out without a lot of noise. But when you get into that $1 million too, you need people that are going to come in, make sure the things are done, do those things consistently, because there's just a lot more structure in place at that point in time.
And have you found that you need more management as you've grown? Whatever that might look like to you?
Um, I find that I take on a perspective that I think that I would say no. So now it's no with the caveat of, I don't give a lot of weight to management in general. I think that management is important, but what's more important is self-leadership, because I've definitely toyed with and hired internal people to be managers. But what I've found is that they just ended up creating more noise within the business. And it made it so that people were less responsible for their own work. And we weren't getting more done. We were getting less done. We were spending more money and we are a lot slower. So I kind of flipped that script a little bit of, rather than having more managers, it's really helping people to develop a level of self leadership. I've been hiring for 10 years now. And self leadership is not something that's really taught. Everybody talks about leaders, of leading others, but you cannot be a good leader unless you first lead yourself. And that comes down to managing your own emotions, not making it the business or somebody else's fault that you are falling into overwhelm. Overwhelm shows up differently for every single person. Helping you to manage your stress, managing your workload, like, these are skills and different things that people need to develop. And I right now don't see a place for, like, when we're going through the hiring process. Like I said, we get almost 1,000, over 1,000 applicants every month, and people are always like, "Well, how can I, like, where can I go to learn these skills?" And honestly, you can learn most of the technical stuff online, but how you think, that is so much harder. Like, AI is great, but we really need to teach people how to think better. And that's why I created the arena, is to solve for that, because I have not found anywhere to do that. because it's not just a matter of watching a video either. You need somebody to work with you on that and mirror back what it is that you're doing and call you out on your stuff. And that's why I think that work is such a great place for that, because most of us have not been blessed with great family lives growing up, and work gives us that spot. And what's really magical of doing this work with my team is the impact it has on their personal lives too. Of doing this, of helping them to develop into self leaders, you see a shift of how they interact with their spouses and their children. And then they just feel like they can accomplish more, not just in work, but outside of work too. They start trying new hobbies, and it's like they become better versions of themselves at work.
Interesting. Yeah. Business is definitely a huge vehicle for self development, I've always said.
Agreed.
What traits, Melody, would you say your best fit clients share beyond just the business size or the vertical? I guess that one of the things with membership sites is you don't really get to choose verticals. It's just people who
Yeah,
have
I guess
membership
so.
sites in a way.
It, I don't know if it's still a niche. I guess it's still a niche. I mean, I like certification companies. Any company that really like my core thing is that I like to work with businesses that actually want to make an impact for their customers. Like, if somebody is just looking to kinda do, like, a quick and dirty, "I wanna do this course, sell a couple $1,000,000, and I don't really care if people actually learn something from it or get any sort of value from it," I'm not really interested in working with that kind of business. I'm interested in working with the business that is like, "We see this problem, people are suffering from this, we wanna really help them to move through this," and that's when I find it really enjoyable, because it's like, okay, what tools, what skills, what things can be utilized to really help them move along in their path to learning a new skill. So, it could be gardening, like we're working with an organic gardening company of like, okay, so how can we really give these people, your students, the value and like how to really move them along in their journey from, no organic garden to organic garden master, shall we say.
Mm. And how do you filter out when you have discovery calls or I guess, yeah, discovery calls or just meeting calls with prospective customers? How do you filter them out? Is it just a feeling thing or how do you make that decision that, yeah, I don't want to work with these folks?
It's a pretty natural filter. The people that are kind of in it for the short term will not want the kind of solution that I'll offer. Like, cause when we develop solutions or technical things, it's very like we're thinking about the short term and then the long term and then where they're at right now too. And people that want to create solid, sustainable businesses that are going to be here for 10 years down the road, they're going to have that long term thought process of like, I want this to work today, but I want this to work 10 years from now. A company that's in it for the short term gain isn't going to want to make that kind of investment because they want to get in and get out and don't really care. They don't
Mm.
really care necessarily about their internal team because they're going to be on to the next one soon. And they don't really care about their customers. Like, yeah, they don't really care about their customers at the end of the day. They serve a purpose. And so the solutions and things that we will recommend will just not be what they're looking for. There's kind of a natural selection process, I would say.
Yeah, sounds like maybe they'll filter themselves out a lot of times.
Uh, there's also like the people that want to blame, shame, and justify. Of like, so if a customer doesn't really want to take responsibility for their business and they want to put it on us, like we're very good communicators. We're always seeking to be better and with that clarity. And you can kind of go back to point out those things and they won't like that. And they'll find a company that will just say yes to them. And we're not that company. We're the company that's going to push back and say, I know that you want to eat those donuts, but they're bad for you and you're going to gain weight. And we think that you really should not eat those donuts. And as much as you want them, this is why, and this is what it's going to potentially lead to. And if they don't want that medicine, then they're just going to find somebody that will just say yes. Just go anywhere and you'll find some developer somewhere that'll be like, yeah, I'll do that thing for you. I don't care. I don't have morals. I don't necessarily think it's because they don't have morals. It's just like they just don't think about those next steps. Again, thinking about that technologist technician, that's a really clear sign of a technician. A technician will do what you tell them to do, but they won't be thinking about what that impact of what it is that they're doing is on the business and then the overall other systems, which is why that technologist role is so, so important within a business.
Well, what's a recent example of a problem you solved or that your team helped to solve that is maybe unsexy that turned out to actually have a really positive impact for your client?
The one that we're working on right now, we've been working on it for several years, but I've seen this across the board, specifically in the membership site world, is everybody sells courses. I know, shocking, right? Like memberships sell courses. But there's a really boxed way of selling that content. I'm a big fan of Stu, who formerly tried, I think they have searching now. They've gone through a couple name changes, so I completely keep up with his latest name change on it. I think it's Membership IO now, something like that. Stu's great. But a lot of it, and what I love about Stu's stuff, he talks about the success path of memberships. But what the gap that I've seen is how we consume content of people has changed. And I don't want to have to go through a whole course if I just want to learn one specific thing. And we're seeing like a shift within the market of like how membership sites work. And then working with clients of like looking at all of their different content, a lot of it doesn't really fit into a course where it's like a preset fine dining meal. They kind of want more of a buffet style. Like, I think I'm gonna have some Chinese food, then I have some dessert, then I'm gonna go get some pizza. And I want to be able to pick and choose depending on what need I have at this point in time. And so what we've created is what we call the content library. And the content library is a restructure of content that gives a content library for people. And then you can make it so that it can be searched based on category and in multiple different layers of category as well. And then you can also give people more of a customized success journey based on who they are and what they specifically need. So individually customized. You can also unlock different elements within the content library at different intervals, which cuts down on your cancellation rate because you say, hey, you've been unlocking a new video every single week for the last 3 months. If you cancel, if you come back, you're not going to have those anymore. So it reduces down your churn rate too on your content and just gives a more flexible way of looking at content. Because like even for myself, I join a lot of membership sites. I don't want to go through your 2-hour course on something. I want to get what I need and then have almost like a choose your own adventure path from there. So what could have been a 2-hour course that's generic for everybody, I could actually consume within half an hour for the pieces that are really actually most important to me. And that's where I think that the content library really answers a problem that we're seeing in the membership site space right now. Okay.
How are you using AI to get better results for your clients and for your team?
I think of AI as a way to optimize both myself and my team. It makes us smarter and makes us also able to move a lot quicker. I find that a lot of the terminologies and like the concepts that I've been talking about even in this podcast have been shaped a lot by AI. Because it's a computer and it doesn't have any of its own it doesn't have any of its like mental stuff, like it's just literally looking at data. It is able to mirror back and point out holes within different frameworks and things that I'm creating really easily. Also helpful that at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep and I'm thinking about these types of things, it's always there. So that's great too. And then with clients, it's just allowed us to work a lot quicker. So for something like creating content has, I think, been one of the really good ones of before that was all, gosh, it was just always like, hey, can you send us content for this? Can you send us content for that? And then most of the times people kind of just like look at it and like deer in the headlights, right? And with AI, we have our process for what information because you need to feed in good information to start with. Like it's not magical. I like to think of it like a really bad intern that's incredibly smart, but also really naive and dumb. And so you kind of have that mixture where you need to prompt it properly, you need to give it the right information. But if you do that, it's enabled us to develop and deliver much better, much better quality work for clients in a much shorter period of time and for less money and cost back to the client too. So we can get those email campaigns, we can get those things up, but somebody still needs to be looking through and reading it through because it does get things wrong and you do just need to have a read through. But I think it's really enabled our team to be more effective, both internally when they're communicating with clients, and then also for clients in the work that we produce for them too.
Do you ever get the clients that they're like, your solution sounds really cool, but ChatGPT has this to say about it?
I wouldn't say that so much as they'll go in and then they'll put something into ChatGPT and ChatGPT will like say, okay, like ChatGPT said, go and do this, this, and this, and it will be wrong in some way. Sometimes not completely wrong, sometimes just subtly wrong. And it can be a little bit frustrating because it's like you have to explain out why ChatGPT didn't quite get it right, and then that takes time versus, okay, like, what do you wanna do? And it's like, well, let's take that into account, but, like, focus on what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish, not just I would consider it like a red herring or a rabbit hole that ChatGPT can sometimes send us down, and it's such a challenge to balance it because at the same time, there was something that I was trying to do within Go High Level the other day, and I was like, "Isn't possible." Posted on Facebook about it in the group, got like 12 different replies about how it's not possible and there's all these ways. And then a friend of mine like put it into, I think, Claude, and like Claude got it right away. I think Go High Level had just released a feature a couple weeks ago, so everybody else hadn't caught up. So there
Mm.
was a way to do it.
So you mentioned you work with seven-figure businesses. I know that's probably I'm sure you'll take, somewhat smaller businesses and somewhat larger businesses. And I'm curious if you found that there's a sweet spot for not necessarily revenue, but revenue is definitely one way to measure it, or revenue, head count, let's say the size or level of management in the business, like dealing with boards, this kind of thing. What's your sweet spot where the clients that you work with, you're able to help them particularly well versus some other group of clients that you could still help, but the results wouldn't be so earth shattering for them as for your ideal clients. If that makes sense.
I would say definitely founder-led companies and companies where the founder's very involved, and it has to be one of 2. Either we're working with the operations person where they have somebody that's in operations that's technically minded, or the founder's heavily involved in operations, and that's typically gonna be the person that we'll work with. I always like to have a direct line to the founder of the company or the business owner because it just helps clear out noise. I've found that it creates challenges if we're just working with somebody who's maybe head of operations, but we don't have a direct line to the founder of the
Mm,
company because things just get lost in translation. It's not like there's anything like mischievous there, but it's more that it's like you play broken telephone a lot of the time. So we do well when we can have a direct line to that founder. I'd say, we do have our lower options. I work like on the retainer level. We're looking for companies that are doing at least $1 million. The numbers just don't work out. I'm a huge fan of profit first. And one of the things with Profit First that I love is it takes away like the budgeting bull of what I would call of like, which I think is really aspirational. Whereas with Profit First, you look at your numbers and 50% can be sent to expenses. And so for what we charge for our retainer level, it doesn't really make sense unless you're around that $1 million mark where we can really push things forward. And there's just not enough meat within the business to really like, we call it our momentum program because it helps move businesses forward on a more consistent basis. So around that $1 million mark, it's really where you get a stronger ROI of putting systems and structures in place. It's where you start thinking about selling your business at some point in time too. So you need more systems, structure, like consistent process, and you've proven your business model at that point too. Around like the 500 mark, you're kind of still throwing some spaghetti at the wall. And not because you're doing anything wrong, but you haven't quite found that like thing that's like, oh yeah, I've really got something that people want. And as you kind of get up to that $1 million, I'd say around $1 million business, like you have something people consistently want. It's worth putting that structure in place. Around 500, you want to be as lean as possible so you can change quickly, and structure can actually be a negative a little bit at that point in time because you become too beholden to that structure where you're not able to grow to that $1 million mark. A lot of companies just sit within that 500 to $1 million mark, either because of team or product market fit, I would say. And, marketing as well is obviously a big factor of getting new people in there. But it's not so much the marketing that's holding them back though when I talk to them. It's more team and then like their like black and white thinking, I would say.
interesting. And are there businesses that are too big, that are just too cumbersome, that it wouldn't be?
It's more like I just don't find I don't love big corporate businesses that have like anytime you want to make a decision, it needs to go to the board and needs to be approved by this person. I like speed. I like getting things done. So like 10 million is probably our high point of like the kind of company that I do like to work with. More of a preference. Like we can still have a really and they love working with us because like we like to get things done and we'll push them. I just find it painful And, it's funny because it's maybe if I was smarter that I would do more of that because it's actually more lucrative to work with those companies. I just don't enjoy it as much. Like, I wanna wanna solve problems. I wanna clear out the noise, and $10 million, you get a lot of bureaucracy. And I don't love the monotony of that of like, "Oh, well, you just have to play the politics game. You just have to play this game." It's like, I'd rather enjoy my life and get things done, move things forward for businesses than have to play that monotony of that bureaucracy that you often find as companies grow.
Is there some mistake that you made early on that still shapes your decision-making process today? Some trauma that we can pick up?
We gonna get into childhood trauma or business trauma or usually a combination of both. I think it really would be around hiring. I don't know if this is for other people or not, but I didn't hold people accountable as much as I could have with kindness. I love Brene Brown and what she talks about, like clarity is kindness. And I took on a lot of guilt and shame for team members that I brought on that made it my fault of why they weren't doing their jobs for one reason or another. And instead of really kind of centering in myself and being like, no, Melody, like you've built this amazing seven-figure company, like you know what you're doing, like you've done this instead of kind of like centering myself in there, not in like an ego way, but like in a calm practice, like you've achieved something way here, I doubted myself. And I doubted myself. And like, there's team members that I kept on board for 2 years. And it was only looking back of how much I realized that it was soul sucking for me of like I was not only paying them but doing their jobs and making sure that their floor was covered and then still had this guilt thrown on me all the time like, oh, you're just the demanding boss, Melody. You want me to respond to emails within 24 hours during the business. I couldn't possibly. I'm stressed out. I've got too much going on. And I would take that on and be like, "Oh, like, well, how can I make this better or easier for you?" And that's really where I came down to that some of them just needed to leave, but others needed more direction and self-leadership. They hadn't developed that skill. And that's really what I've learned now is like, can I give people that space to develop this and mirror that back to them, what's actually happening? And some people are just not ready for that journey, and that's great. They have a journey elsewhere. And then the people that are ready for that journey, it's magical to watch. If you're running a business, like you know this, and don't let people tell you that it's somehow your fault that they're not showing up in some way for you.
That's really interesting. And the people that are capable of self-leadership, how do you elicit that from them? How do you lead them to be self-leaders and to I guess what's the EOS thing? It's get it, want it, has the capability to do it, right? So I guess in
Yeah,
that
it
scenario,
is.
they want it, they're capable of doing it, but they don't get it. Or maybe they don't want it. No, if they don't want it, they need
I
to.
don't know. I think you still need all three of those aspects even to develop self-leaders. The missing piece there is the structure to how to do that. And I think one of the most important factors is a very quick feedback loop, a kind but quick feedback loop. A lot of the business structure, even within EOS, really centers around like a 3-month review type idea or like a one-on-one. Whereas I've developed a system with ClarityOS that's almost immediate. You see it, you flag it up. There's a way to do that that's kind, and then you look for patterns within that. And a lot of developing self-leadership, it comes back to mirroring of and then noticing. So, like one of the things that I do with my team oftentimes is just recognizing when I see them falling into stress. And like because you can feel it. Like if you're an empathetic person and you're connected to that, you can kind of get that. Or you can reflect like I'm getting this sense from you. It's really coming at it not at from a place of you're this, but I'm just curious what's going on here for you. Like this is what I'm getting and just being open to whatever they say of because it could be other things, but it helps to develop their awareness of how they're managing things and so, like, as an example, one of the team members, I noticed she was really stressed out. And I just said, like, hey, like, let's just chat this, like, hey, what's going on with you? What's happening here? And sometimes it's a message on Slack, sometimes it's a call. It just depends on what it is and what's going on with that person. And she comes and she's like, I've just got way too much on my plate. And I was like, okay, so let's dig into this. What's going on? She's like, I've got to get this done, this done, this done. And it all has to be done today. And so then you ask more questions like, well, who said that you had to have all those things done? She's like, well, you asked me to do this thing on our one-on-one, and then a client got this, and then this, and this. And I was like, but nobody said like you had to get those things done today. Well, oh, I guess not. And I was like, okay, well, what's the most important one of all those things? Like, if you were just going to get one of those things done, what would it be? It's like, well, this is the most important. It's like, okay, so what if you were to focus on that one thing and then on this one, make a progress on it, spend 15 minutes, go back to that person and say, hey, would it be okay if I got this to you on Wednesday? And then go back to that second person, make just some, because I do think you should make some progress, not procrastinate on it. What's one thing you can do just to make it move it a little bit forward, maybe not totally to completion, and then communicate with that person to say, hey, would it be okay if I got this to you on this day? And that communication element, because most people are like fairly like cool. And they're like, as long as you do the thing when you're supposed to do it, I'm quite happy. And it was just like this weight just came off of her. Like, but the work didn't change. All that changed was her perspective on that, and that's really what self-leadership is developing that realm, but you can't do it in a vacuum. You really do need somebody that's gonna be looking at that, mirroring that back for you, and then working through that process, and she does that now, like, we've gone through that process together. I think we only did it once or twice, and now she does it herself. She goes through that process, and I've trained her to say, like, "If you're not sure on priority level, like, I'm always here as a sounding board." And that's when I say management needs to change. When I think about how management is termed in EOS and all these other systems, it doesn't take into account that emotionality. And that's why I kind of cringe a little bit. Like, do you put managers in place? I'm like, no, because it just feels so wrong. And it's like we need to be developing self leaders and more coaches than I would say managers. It's not
Mm.
about managing that person, it's about leading them and coaching them to manage themselves and become self-leaders. And that's why it's a nuance, and I'm probably getting a little bit, like, there, but it's really different when you actually see it within operating a business.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's almost like the manager, really, it's not so much managing, it's facilitating or even getting out of the way a lot of times.
Mhm.
Whereas maybe the more traditional view of management is somebody who's there to dictate KPIs and this, but you don't need a
Yes.
manager to track KPIs, right? You kind of just need, I guess, somebody to set the tone, and even then, that may not be necessary. That could be the founder if you have a flatter organization. But no, I dig that distinction for sure.
Yeah, you need to set the frame. Like, the common way of managing is more of a command and control, but it just does not work in tech because I can't tell you go and do this thing because when you get in there, like OpenAI, like we do custom AI agents, they released a new build on their AI backend development portal that's completely different than it was a week ago. So how I might have told you to command and control of how to do something is completely different now than it was a week ago. How can we possibly keep documentation up to date with that? I can't tell you what to do. We need to be clear on what direction we're trying to go on, align consistently and communicate effectively, but you can only do that with people that are self-led. It does not work if they're looking to be told what to do, and unfortunately, that's what our school system currently teaches. Sit, wait, here's your rubric of how you're gonna be graded on your essay. Follow this rubric. We're gonna give you everything that you need to do this thing. You're gonna go and do it. And then the workplace has got this it's just not like that at all. I know I wanna implement an AI chatbot, but it's like, which one's the best one? Like, you need people need to be able to go in and figure that out, but they're not being taught how to be self-led. They're being taught to follow orders. So this massive, massive gap. And that's why it's so hard to hire is because of that gap. And there's just simply nowhere to really learn that, which is what we're teaching within the arena. And the arena, like the whole name of it is really around that idea of you want people that are in the arena that have blood, sweat, and tears on their face that are at battle, doing the hard work, not just be waiting to be told what to do. And when I think about that, you're in the stands if you're waiting to be told what to do. If you're blaming, shaming, denying, and justifying, you're in that stands waiting for somebody. And whereas like I want to work with people, both business owners and clients, and even in my personal life, that are willing to get in the arena, have those hard conversations, and do cool stuff.
Melody, what advice do you wish small business owners had about tech adoption that could save them years of pain and allow them to collaborate more effectively with service providers such as business tech ninjas?
Focus on the problem you're looking for it to solve, not all the things it can do. So, for an example of a CRM, I'm a big fan of Go High Level. And the challenge with Go High Level is there's so many options in there. And what can happen is you get in there and like, I'm going to set up my Google business listing. I'm going to get some text messages. I'm going to get there. Yeah, but your whole reason why you bought it was a CRM so that people could manage your contacts, whatever. Focus on that first, then add more layers to it, and then iterate over time. But focus on the core problem it's trying to solve initially, then add more things. Because the more noise you add, then it's like 6 months down the path, and it's like, well, we still don't have it live, and it's like, well, I can tell you why.
Yeah, makes total sense. And it's hard to do. It takes a certain level of JOMO where
Yeah.
you're looking at your to-do list, and this is every business owner or not business owner can resonate with this, is like, "Ah, I have all this stuff to do, and ooh,
Hmm.
free dopamine here, here, and here. Let me check my email." What about this really mundane thing that is probably the number one priority that you really just don't want to do? Why don't you just go do that? I
Yeah.
think what Jocko might say is like, "You don't want to do that? Good, do it anyway."
Sounds
That's
great.
really the answer.
Yeah. It and it comes back to that even our own self-leadership too. Of, I have to think about my own stuff. I think it's just like a people thing. Like you gotta force yourself. Like it's discipline. Doing the things that you don't want to do that you know are gonna be good for your future self.
Yeah, you know what's interesting I found too is like the more that you go on like Instagram or go look for little free dopamine things, the more you suck at doing what you need to do because it erodes
Yeah.
your self discipline and erodes your capacity for being bored, quote
Yeah.
unquote bored. And then if you cut that stuff off, if you do a bit of a detox, then
Mhm.
boring stuff, quote unquote, suddenly seems kind of interesting. You're like, oh man, like I freaking love writing documentation, or whatever it is.
Fascinating. I'm definitely addicted to Instagram, so I should probably go on a detox personally.
Yeah. How do you use it for business at all? Since we're on the topic.
Not so much for business. I will share different ideas and different things that we don't really get any business from Instagram, I wouldn't say. I like to just kind of keep up with like the undertones. I'm a big fan of Gary Vee, and he talks a lot about just being able to stay relevant. So I think not being on there can be a challenge because you need to have relevance, especially in the space that we're in with tech, of like just seeing what new tools are out there. I really love Instagram ads because I get a lot of like what are the things that people are pushing. I'm also a really big fan of Facebook groups. Think probably if I had to get rid of one, I'd probably get rid of Instagram, but save Facebook groups. You just see a lot more of the realness of what people are actually talking about. I'm really getting into Reddit now too. I think Reddit has a lot of value of just like real conversation. It's kind of a question mark, like where are those like virtual town halls where you can get a good pulse on like what people actually care about, like what's really going on with them. But I think, the name of the game of business is solving people's problems. And the more you can get a pulse on like what are people struggling with, the more that you can run with that, solve their problems. And, it's a flywheel. You solve people's problems, they pay you. You solve more problems, they pay you more.
Definitely. Well, to wrap things up, I have a question that if you were to start your business from scratch, knowing what you know now, which is, I mean, wouldn't we all love to do that? What would you do
Yeah.
differently? Or would you start it?
If I was starting my business from scratch, I think I've had this question before. I've never really had a good answer. Maybe one day I will get a better answer for it. I would I just have more patience with myself in general, enjoy the process more. I think that, when I first started, I wanted to be where I am now, and now I'm just as impatient to get to the next level. And I think it's a journey. Gosh, I just feel want to throw up in my mouth a little bit as these words are coming out of my mouth. It's a journey. It's about the process. But the reason why people use it so much is because it's true, but like really embodying that, I think is a lot harder in practice. But it's still something that I'm working on even today of how do I just appreciate more of where I am? And there's a great book, The Gap and the Gain, which I think is really, really helpful in that process. But I caused myself a lot of stress and put my body and put myself last because it was like, well, I just need to get to this. I just need to get to this. I just need to get to this. And business is really fun. I really, really enjoy running my company. I really, really enjoy what we do. And it's like, it's not for me necessarily about getting to that next revenue number or the next client or the next this, but like, what do I love about this? Doing that and doing it in a way where I can work well, but also live well at the same time. And I think just embracing that, I think is really, really important because, we're not here for a long time.
Very wise words indeed, Melody. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been a delight to be here.